Welcome to the iHemp Hour. My name's Dave Craybill. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp. And we're excited to have a really cool conversation today about phytoremediation. That's a word on everybody's mind these days, right? So before we get to our guests, let's just go around the horn real quick and say hi. Mike, down in Ann Arbor, you survived the storm that went through?
Yeah, just kind of about 15 minutes ago ended, but I'll bet we got an inch of rain in about 20 minutes. It was really coming down. But yes, we're still here. They're building arcs around our neighborhood, though. I mean, so it's getting kind of concerned about all the water. We're making a lot of water down here.
Mm-hmm. All right, and Blaine is having some technical challenges, so I'm sure he'll join us at some point.
Well, I'm like that Pink Floyd song today, you know, the voice in your head, but I'm not here.
Oh, I thought you were going to a different song. I see your knee.
I thought he was going to break into song for a second. I was kind of worried. So
yeah, is that a good knee? Is that a sexy looking knee?
No. In fact, we're going to remove you for now until you get that sorted out. So, all right. Well, our guest today is Lesley Putman. Lesley is with Northern Michigan University, and as a little teaser, as I had in the intro, that we're going to talk about phytoremediation of PFAS.
Easy for you to say. So
PFAS with hemp. It's all about cleaning soil with hemp. And, Lesley has been working on this along with her cohort in the soil, Margaret Brum. So, Lesley, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved in using hemp for phytoremediation and why that's important to you?
All right. Well, I've been working with phytoremediation for a number of years. I've used different plants. I've used black locust. I've used little blue stem, wheatgrass, and different contaminants too. But with the Farm Bill, when it made it so that we could use hemp in universities, I decided I would start using hemp. It's a very interesting plant, and there's not a whole lot of research on it. So I thought it was a good opportunity to, use that and see if it could work as a phytoremediator. And then at the same time, PFAS, which stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, became a big contaminant that everyone was talking about and was showing up everywhere, and they're starting to regulate it. And so I thought, well, let's see if hemp can be useful at phytoremediating these types of chemicals. So that's how I got into this hemp phytoremediation of PFAS.
And Margaret, and would you introduce Margaret and her role?
I'm introducing her. Okay, I'm introducing her. So this is Margaret Brum, and she has a degree from Michigan Tech in chemical engineering, and then she went to law school. She's a patent lawyer, and I met her on a Great Lakes freighter a year ago, and it's kind of a coincidence that we were on this freighter together, and I didn't know her, but we started talking, and she asked me what I did, what my research was on. I told her, oh yeah, hemp and PFAS, and I didn't expect her to know anything about that, but lo and behold, she says, oh, well, I can get you some sludge that contains PFAS. So my ears perked up, and I thought that sounded like a good idea, because in my studies, I bought PFAS from chemical companies and used it in hydroponic studies and in the greenhouse, and but really it's I wanted to move into some practical uses, which is actually having landfill leachate or sludge which contain PFAS, and use those and see if the hemp would be able to pull the PFAS out of those materials. So that was how we got together, and we shortly after we returned from our Great Lakes freighter trip, we went out to Sawyer, the Air Force Base, former Air Force Base, and got a 5-gallon bucket or 2 of sludge and brought it back to the lab.
And the reason I was able to recognize her work is very prosaic. I was on the Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Board, which handles the wastewater treatment plant in Marquette, but there's also a wastewater treatment plant at KI Sawyer that had a difficulty with gallons and gallons of sludge that was contaminated with PFAS, where they were seeking grants in order to safely dispose of the PFAS contaminated sludge. So it was one of those happenstance, 2 people on a boat that didn't know each other before the trip, and all of a sudden it's like, well, if you need this, I can help you out. And pretty much that's how we worked ever since. Yep.
Awesome. So let's back up a little bit. Where do these alkalines, these PFAS, where do they come from?
Well, do you have a non-stick pan?
I have in the past, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's anything that's non-stick or waterproof. That is, the chemical that's used to impart that quality is PFAS. So, perfluoroalkyl substances. They have a lot of fluorines on them, which makes them hydrophobic and gives them the quality of slipperiness. And so that's, we've all benefited from these chemicals that have made life easier for us. But unfortunately, they don't degrade easily. They're not degraded in nature in any reasonable time. And they're finding that they have some health effects. And there's thousands of these chemicals, and not all of them are toxic, but there are some that are, and so they're trying to regulate them.
Dow's certainly a big contributor with Teflon, I would assume would be in that category, right?
Yeah. 3M.
Actually, if I can interject here, if you go to the state of Michigan website, there are pages and pages on PFAS in the state of Michigan, and there's a comprehensive map of all the locations within the state where they've identified significant amount of PFAS contamination. A lot of it has to do with industrial activity, but also any former military base within the state of Michigan would have PFAS contamination, because PFAS is an element of that firefighting foam that they used any place they had aircraft. And they did not appreciate that every time they deployed that foam, they were putting it into the ground. And that's why the state of Michigan is actually leading many, many states in how much they already know about where the PFAS contamination is. And that makes it more accessible information for the general public to find out where it is.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's like a first step to
Yes.
to understand it. I remember reading about that for grayling.
Yes.
Some activity there.
And
so,
go ahead.
Well, how does a plant, so these PFAS, they stay in the ground. How does a plant capture that? Is it seeking it out, or is it just ancillary because it's pulling water up from the soil that it comes along?
Yes, it's the latter. It's because it's pulling water from the soil. The PFAS is in the water, and so it pulls it up with the water. So, and they're actually studying that. Some of them just go through the cell walls and just come up through or in between the cells and so forth. But they've also found that there's some transporters that will also bring them into the plant. So that's an area of study that's not too much is understood about that.
Also, that's a kind of relatively new area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I see Blaine's got his self settled now. Welcome, Blaine.
The great and powerful Blaine Bechtel.
I got to get off mute.
Pay
There we
no
go.
attention to that man behind the curtain. Okay.
Oh, okay, it's a great day. Anyways, so we have a lot of PFAS down here in Grand Rapids, by the airport, a little north of the airport, and it seems like every day they're kind of finding a new place where this seems to be a problem. So,
And we have the old Gilman Scientific Facility, which is a Superfund site, closed about 30 years ago, which is leaching into the Huron River, which is where we get our drinking water. So I have filters on my faucets at home here so that I filter all that crap out so that it doesn't get into me, because it is, according to what I've read, carcinogenic, so.
Well, in your area of the state, sir, near Grand Rapids, north of Grand Rapids, is a company called Wolverine Worldwide Incorporated, and they're famous for making hush puppy shoes, which are made out of pig leather, and therefore they ran a tannery where you had chemicals added to cure the leather. And Wolverine Worldwide Incorporated was disposing of their used chemicals in the watershed, and they just signed I think it's a $43 million settlement with the state of Michigan to work on the cleanup from just one business in that area. That was not a military business, but it is an active part of the remediation is from Wolverine Worldwide Incorporated.
Dumping it into the Grand River, which flows through Grand Rapids. Yes. So
well, the old solution used to be, right? The solution to pollution is dilution, right? I mean, that's what they were doing back then, trying to do that. So
we kind of say that real softly now, if we say that at all, because that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the other issue then is the fishermen. They're warning fishermen, freshwater fish, don't eat very many of them, because obviously the fish are swimming in this stuff. So,
sir, if you check the state of Michigan website on PFAS, there are locations indicated where, for example, you can harvest a deer, but you're warned not to take the liver or any of the internal organs, because that's where the PFAS would accumulate. And so, as I said, the state of Michigan is doing, I think, a very reasonable job in tracking these locations and notifying people in advance of what game is relatively safe to harvest versus not.
Well, one of my questions, we know that they're doing this also over in Russia, Chernobyl. They're using it to remediate the soil there. So we know the plant's good for soaking up these chemicals and getting it into the plant. But do we still have a problem then in the plant with it being toxic? And how do we get rid of that or dispose of that safely or properly?
Well, it depends on where in the plant it is. If it goes up into the leaves, you got to harvest it and then incinerate it pretty much if you want to get rid of it. Otherwise, it's just going to get passed on. If you put it in a landfill, it's going to get into the leachate and just keep going. So it has to be taken care of once it gets up into the plant. The studies that I've been doing with PFOS, which is one of the more toxic ones, it mainly stays in the roots. It doesn't come up so much into the leaves, and so that's mainly useful for making sure that it doesn't go down into the groundwater. If you have a contaminated site, to be able to hold it from going into the groundwater is definitely better than having it get in the groundwater, because that's the main way it causes problems if it gets in the drinking water. So even if that's all it does, that's a help. My dream would be that it would go into the stem and the fiber, and then you could harvest the hemp and use the fiber for construction materials, and then it would kind of be locked in place and
sequestered. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So really, how effective are we with remediation? Are we 1 foot down? Are we 2 feet down? How far will it pull this material out of the soil?
I don't know. There's not enough research yet for that. So
if I can speak of the groundbreaking work Dr. Putman is doing, up until this past summer, she was working in the lab with hydroponically growing to verify the hypothesis that you could extract these forever chemicals from water using hemp. Last Friday, the first above ground planting of hemp in soil took place here on the NMU campus. Not kidding you, my Facebook post said the world has changed because now it's growing in actual growth medium, and later on, as the plants get more sturdy, Dr. Putman has plans, and I'll let her describe it, of adding wastewater cake sludge from the Marquette area wastewater plant, which doesn't have PFAS in it now, but it's going to be used as a growth medium to see in the future if you have to pull PFAS out of wastewater sludge, that it'll support the growth of the sludge. If you want to explain what you're going to be doing with the sludge later on.
Yeah, so there's still a lot to understand. I mean, with what the hemp can do, so and how much it can do, but that's, they've been putting sewage sludge on fields for a long time to fertilize them, and they've discovered, oh, this isn't such a good thing because the plants that grow in that farm then contain PFAS. So, they've quit doing that. But, on the other hand, if we put that sludge onto a hemp field and grow hemp and it gets into the hemp, we can harvest the hemp and destroy the hemp, incinerate it, and get rid of it.
I want to make sure I understand what you just said, because sludge is from human excrement, right?
Yes, sir. Can I answer your question? I think I know where you're going.
The PFAS
Right now, the Marquette area wastewater plant doesn't have PFAS in its sludge.
Oh,
They
okay.
test for it, it's not there. In the future, the state will be tightening up the testing restrictions everywhere because they don't want wastewater, either the clear liquid that goes back into the water or the cake sludge of the solids. So anticipation of that, Dr. Putman requested a cake sludge from the Marquette area plant, which has no PFAS in it, just to verify that it could be used as a growth medium for hemp in the event trying to pull PFAS out of sludge in some future date.
Okay.
Did that help?
It does, yeah.
So currently you're saying that the sludge that they're applying to the agricultural ground is tested for PFAS, and if it has it in it, they can't put it on the ground.
Yes, based on my knowledge of the Marquette area wastewater plant, they've never put their cake sludge onto a field where human food was grown. It was put on fields where basically mine tailings were. That's the rock that's put up above ground when they dug old mines. And it doesn't rehabilitate itself because it doesn't have any soil. So they put the sludge there, and then they put plants in the sludge, and they basically regrow the ground cover using the wastewater sludge as nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
But again, no, they're not growing human food in wastewater sludge.
From what you know of there, but like down here in my city, I live in Grand Haven, I know that they've been using the sludge from the waste plant and been putting it onto agricultural ground. So I'll do a little research here on this end to see what
I
they're
would
testing.
encourage you to go to your wastewater plant to verify where because it's very heavily regulated in the state of Michigan when they can start applying the sludge and to what use they can make of it. So I'm encouraging you to go to your wastewater advisory board in your area to confirm what they're doing.
There's a wastewater treatment facility in Flint that's working with a company in Sweden, and they're using it. Are you familiar with it? Because you can probably speak to it more than I. But they're using it to create. Well, I imagine it would create methane gas, but some type of fuel to fuel vehicles.
Well,
yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Some kind of tank, and I don't know. I'm getting a total loss for the science behind it, but
if you want, in the Marquette area, methane gas is extracted from the process of treating sewage. And it is used to be burned off, wasted, but now it's used in natural gas engines that are used to provide power within the plant. This has happened in the last 5 or 10 years.
That's probably what they're doing. Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of time and money has been put by the state into the Flint wastewater system after the debacle of changing the source of the water. So yes, you've raised a very valid point. At any spot in the state of Michigan, what they do with their wastewater sludge, what they do with their leachate from the landfill is subject to where they're coming from in terms of what type of materials go into their waste.
Yeah, it's a whole cycle. So it's how we treat every part of that cycle affects every other part of the cycle. So what makes the hemp plant unique, for remediation?
Well, there's other plants that are used for remediation too. I just, it can grow in non-ideal conditions, which is a good thing, and it is fast growing. But other than that, it just, I kind of chose it just because I could, but also I appreciate the fact that it has, uses. There's a lot of uses for hemp, and so, why not grow it for this, and then you can, if it pulls up contaminants, and then you can still use it for making whatever you want, textiles, hempcrete, whatever, then, I think that's a good way to do the phytoremediation, is to end up with something that's useful.
Are you currently, with your testing that you're doing, are you comparing it to any other plant material, or you're just using the hemp right now?
Nope, I'm just using hemp.
Okay.
I do have, I did get three varieties of hemp that I'm testing, so I can compare, the varieties of hemp. So
Can you tell us what varieties?
yeah, Erlina, Xanthica, and USO 30 or 31. Write them down.
Are they out of Canada or Chinese or French?
Oh yeah, Erlina 8 FC, Xanthica 70, USO 31. I believe, like they say, they were shipped from France.
France. Okay.
So James DeDecker put me in contact with, his supplier, I don't know how to say it, Conopius or something like that.
Yeah, we know them. They're friends of ours. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Good
So that's who Rob and I dealt with, and
well, a little shout out to them then. All right.
Yeah. And I did. Yeah, he was kind enough to send me like 1 pound bags, because normally he deals with large quantities. I'm like, I don't even have any place to put large quantities, so he was able to get me 1 pound bags of each of these varieties, and so those are the ones that I'm testing.
All right.
Now, are you involved? I know we had something on the show about a year ago. Are you involved with the project that's working on the mining waste in northern Michigan and using hemp to mitigate against that, or not? Is that
I have interacted with them, but I haven't lately. I don't know what happened to that project. I wrote a support letter for someone from Wisconsin who was going to, he wasn't going to use hemp, he was going to use willow and poplar. He was proposing to do that. He was writing a grant, and I wrote him a letter of support for that. And that was that same area with the mining waste, the mine tailings. But I don't think that the group that was planning to do the hemp, I don't think they have moved forward yet.
I know previous to the pandemic, I was on another show where the city of Detroit was taking a serious look at hemp, because there's 30,000 abandoned buildings in the city. And when they tear them down, I wouldn't say mini Superfund sites, but there's a whole bunch of gunk in the ground. And so they're not really usable for some other building until they do something with the soil. And they just didn't have the kind of money it would take to, dig up all the soil and transport it to these secure, places where they could dump it and all that jazz. So they were looking at, I know the mayor, Duggan, was looking at doing something with hemp, but that sort of just fizzled out. I don't know what happened exactly. But that would have been a heck of a way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
And then tie that in with the hemp building stuff. The other thing is the auto industry is starting to get real aggressively into hemp composites. Seems like you could tie that all together or something, because obviously you're not going to chew on your dashboard, right? So
Right.
you have to worry about human consumption, but that would solve a lot of problems. And then you'd have urban farmers too. You'd have to have somebody taking care of all that, and so you could hire people. I mean, it seems like a great idea. Just it didn't come together.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that because I would really like to see that. If that's a way to help with, bring the city back.
A lot of abandoned properties. Once you get out of the downtown area, you get out into the not the suburbs, but the edges of Detroit. There's a lot of abandoned buildings.
A lot of opportunity there.
Yes, indeed.
So Lesley, if you probably don't have this answer yet, but how many cycles? What's it take if you have truly dirty soil? How long does it take to make that clean soil?
That's with phytoremediation. It's not a quick process. The value in it is that it's a lot less expensive than the other ways of cleaning the soil, like digging it up or, other things that they do. So it's not meant to be a quick fix. So it's an investment and it'll take time. So
I can speak to that. We have a very practical reason for focusing on this up here. The Marquette Solid Waste Management Authority is currently under a consent agreement with the state of Michigan to reduce the amount of PFAS detectable in the leachate from their waste cells. That's where you have a landfill, you build a cell, you put waste in it, and then invariably you have liquid coming off of it. It's called leachate. And they've been testing, and they have found PFAS above levels there. So the consent agreement with the state required them to pick a remediation method. And the method they picked was activated carbon. And Dr. Putman and I were at the meeting where they announced to the people of the area it was going to be an $8 million investment in the technology for activated carbon. And then running the leachate through there to remove the PFAS was going to be a minimum of $800,000 a year in maintenance, because activated carbon gets used up and you have to replace it. What Dr. Putman and I have been kicking around as an idea is, rather than saying you don't need the activated carbon, but you could do pre-treatment of the leachate through a greenhouse full of hemp, and you can do post-treatment of the leachate, again through a greenhouse full of hemp, where it would remove a certain amount, then it could be treated, and then remove another amount. And so you'd reduce the amount of heavy-duty chemical removal that you have to do. That's our beginning plan. And I hope that makes sense to everyone, because unfortunately, the removal of PFAS right now is heavily dependent on existing technologies that are expensive and require maintenance.
I just don't understand where the greenhouse. I pictured like a field of hemp. Like you would have a retention pond type thing, where it's going through that field of hemp. But
we could very well, in certain types of the year, run hemp outside. Our growing season in Marquette is about 2
weeks.
2.5 months.
2 weeks.
And so
2 weeks.
the beauty, Dr. Putman explained this to me. One of the reasons she focuses on hemp, tell them about how quickly you can get a crop.
60 days.
Yeah, I grow my, the experiments I've done, I've, my greenhouse ones, I grew for 10 weeks and got, PFAS up into the plants. My hydroponic ones, I just grow for, like 2 months at the most. But really, I found, like, hydroponically, I found that I got as much as I was going to get after 30 days, actually. So that's.
Envision a contaminated site where you had the heavy duty chemical or plasma treatment. I get 5 or 6 emails a week with papers in it talking about new treatment methods, and none of them have focused on the idea of a greenhouse ahead of time where you could continually be growing hemp and pre-treating. Then it goes into the heavy duty treatment at a lesser level, comes out, and you finish it off with more. And you could have a viable technique that would reduce the overall investment and yet deliver the low amount of PFAS that the government is insisting upon.
See, she's the chemical engineer and she thinks about, the big picture like that.
I've actually sketched out the greenhouse and the piping as well, which is essentially Dr. Putman's focus is on this plant that was, as you know, was never allowed to be studied before.
Mhm.
And so she's doing groundbreaking studying. And I'm thinking, well, if we had a greenhouse at the landfill, we could set up for this amount, run the leachate through, and then run it through the big equipment they're going to buy, and then run it through another one. And you would be able to reduce the amount of investment that the taxpayers would have to pay for.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is quite a different process or theory, Dave, than I was thinking too. With this, have you found that is there a part in the growth stage where there's more uptake? So in other words, like when the plant is within the first 4 weeks or the 7 to 12 week period, have you got that far along with the study yet to see where?
Just hydroponics. I did that time study, and it was like the 30-day mark was kind of the optimum. Like it didn't really make sense to grow them for more than 30 days because they got as much as they're going to get in that 30 days. So, and at that point, and that's like hydroponically, I was growing Chinese hemp then, and that was, they flowered in my hydroponic study. They were flowering by like my 50-day time point. So like 30 days, that's even before flowering.
And right now you're using, it sounds like either a fiber variety,
Yes.
more than the CBD plant variety.
Right.
Well, and those are going to have a pretty long tap root too, aren't they?
Yeah, I'll find out. I'm going to harvest tomorrow, actually. My first greenhouse Erlina variety study. I'm going to harvest them tomorrow, so we'll find out what the roots look like.
And how tall are those plants right now?
About 2 feet.
Okay.
And are they in the ground or are they up in beds?
These are in the greenhouse, so they're just in 4-inch pots. And they've been growing for, I've been treating them for a month. So
they're just in 4-inch pots.
Yeah.
Well,
because then when I treat them, then the contaminant will be right there for them to take up. So that's why I do them in the small pots, and I don't want to grow them that long. So that seems, we'll see how it works, but it seems to have worked okay for their growing.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a massive root ball.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope it's all filled with PFAS.
and
have you Margaret or Leslie, are there other professors, other studies that are going on that you've been able to coordinate with or been able to help with them, or is there that kind of, are we at that level yet where there's quite a bit of study going on?
Can I tell them about what Molly said? Molly Mott is the lady with the state of Michigan.
We're familiar with Molly.
Hemp.
Yep.
You all know her?
Of course.
Yep.
Okay, we coordinated with her so she knows about Dr. Putman's work.
Sure.
And there's going to be a conference this November. And even before the first above ground planter was purchased, Molly had put aside time for Dr. Putman to share her work. So, I mean, I don't know what else Dr. Putman will talk about sharing her work with, but we're already got a slot in that conference, which I thought was indicative of how eager people were to hear about good work being done.
Yeah, there's not anyone else in in this university doing hemp phytoremediation. One of my colleagues, brand new colleague, who's an inorganic chemist, she's looking at, using nanoparticles to somehow she's going to use them to do some chemical reaction to help get rid of PFAS. So that's a totally different thing. But there is a group, the Kinetic Agricultural Experimental Station. They worked with the tribe in Maine, where there's a Air Force base. It's kind of like K.I. Sawyer here, an old Air Force base, because of all the firefighting foam that was put on there. There's lots of PFAS in the ground, and they're doing studies there, where they're doing phytoremediation with hemp. And then they just formed a consortium, and Margaret doesn't even know about this because I just found this out a couple days ago, is they've joined forces with University of Minnesota, Yale, and the National Institute of Environmental Health. And they're doing like a study using nanoparticles to enhance the phytoremediation of PFAS by hemp. So that's kind of the biggest study I've seen. It's a multi-year funded study. But other than that, there's just pockets here and there of people doing hemp studies and phytoremediation. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
By the
this will
way,
be interesting then. Now is this thing in November with Molly, is that something here in Michigan that I'm assuming?
I assume so.
she said it was set up either to be in person or Dr. Putman could attend via
Oh, okay.
Zoom.
Awesome.
She was very excited to hear of the research being done here in Michigan, as Dr. Putman can tell you that she works in the lab on one level of research, and then setting up the farm just happened in the past month. I mean, we got above ground planters and special growing soil, and setting that up at the NMU farm just took place within the last 2 to 3 months. And so we're starting, what I want to say is we're starting the process of taking it outdoors. And then we have now the tools to grow things outdoors in more real life conditions.
Well, it sounds like you're well connected. You said all the names, the right names of people. So, but if iHemp Michigan can be of any assistance or help for you, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to do that, and we'll love to share your studies and your findings when that's available. That'd be awesome for sure.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, there's so many things that are going on with it. So, one question I have though, you talked a little bit about using it in building material. So locking up the PFAS into the herd, basically, or the fiber, is there any kind of off-gassing or any kind of thing like that happens with the PFAS?
No, it's not a volatile compound, so I would feel pretty confident that it's stuck in there, especially like if it's some kind of a polymer or or even hempcrete. I think it would. I've never touched hempcrete, but I know they use it for building material.
We'll have to get you involved in that then somehow.
Yeah.
Dave's got a block there somewhere, doesn't he? There we go.
Got your little sample for you. So it's mostly limestone.
Oh, well, as an engineer, there's a whole study of things you can put in concrete to either enhance the concrete or to put away things that will not come into contact, A, with people, or B, with water, because they don't leach when they're buried in cement, things like that. So the engineering of, what did you call, hempcrete and other things, that's been ongoing for many, many years. There's just a lot of people. This is a global, as you know, it's a global concern. And there's a lot of people doing all sorts of different ways to try to remediate PFAS in the real world where it is. And the exciting thing about this for me, and I have to say, I'm very, very excited about this is that Northern Michigan University committed to a medicinal plant chemistry program, and they got instruments from a Japanese company, state-of-the-art instruments. And within 5 years of that, I'm very good at buying the above ground planters. I'm very good at finding people to put them together. Dr. Putman and her students are very good at doing the actual work, but it's being done at Northern Michigan University in the state of Michigan with resources that were designated for this. It's like a really practical medicinal plant chemistry issue.
And this wouldn't be happening if we didn't have these very sophisticated instruments that we got for the medicinal plant chemistry program. I mean, that's how I can do this, because to analyze for PFAS, it's very difficult. You need high quality, high performing instruments, and we have one of those thanks to the medicinal plant chemistry program. So
I have a question for you ladies. If these PFAS are an issue and we need to eliminate them, are they gone from? I still see them selling Teflon and those kind of non-stick pans and such.
I can address that from a chemical engineering standpoint. There are still companies manufacturing materials with PFAS in them. There's a settlement just went through with 3M. Over $10 billion was shared with a number of plaintiffs to make up for the fact that 3M put PFAS into the stream of commerce. So I can't tell you that they've stopped making them. I can tell you that the cost of making them and putting them in the stream of commerce is exorbitant. And therefore, I would expect in the future more and more regulations stating what you can and cannot put out in the stream of like PFAS versus trying to clean up what's already there.
They aren't making like PFOS, which is most toxic one. They're not making that anymore, but it's already out there, and so people are still using it. And like I saw a plot with we all have PFAS in our blood. I hate to tell you, but that's the way it is. And like they've actually been measuring that, and it's been going down since they quit making PFAS. So it is kind of helping. It is because they stopped making it. It is decreasing, so that's a good thing.
All right. So there's hope for the future.
Yeah.
And especially with your research. So that's great research that you're doing. We really appreciate it.
I'm glad that Dr. Putman is getting the attention and recognition she deserves. And it's a problem that a lot of really smart people are working on. And I'm happy that they're working on it here, where we have so many smart people. That's just I grew up in Marquette, and a long time ago, we were pretty separate from the rest of the world. And now we got state-of-the-art research going on and a real world problem here in Marquette. So I'm just putting my 2 cents in for what a good deal it is.
No, you guys are up in God's country. It's beautiful up there.
Yeah,
I'll be up next month. We're kayaking around Pictured Rocks. So I'll be up in the woods.
Best of luck in your trip.
Yeah. I'll stop by.
Margaret, Lesley, is there anything as you move forward? Obviously, there'll be more things, but is there anything right now that if you had a wish list or a dream list that could help you, move the project more forward or get better results or more results at this time? Besides a ton of money, which money solves all problems usually.
Yeah.
We're trying to send samples out to verify Dr. Putman's testing to a certified PFAS lab, because the state of Michigan requires the PFAS testing to be done by a certified lab. We have a lab set up, and I have a private donor who's willing to fund the first 10 samples. However, the red tape involved in having the samples shipped down there has stopped us so far. So if we could get a coupon for these certified labs so we could just ship samples there, that would be great. But with or without the coupon, her work continues.
Yeah.
Are the tests expensive? I mean, are they thousands of dollars? Are they hundreds of
Yeah,
dollars?
like
Are they-
it's $300 per sample.
$375 per each sample. And then if you want to do cryogenic grinding, which she doesn't want to send out, but if you have to do like plant grinding, that's $575 a sample. My job in this is to send out for bidding and to see what numbers are. And we got a number from a state of Michigan approved certified lab for testing for PFAS, which, by the way, for your listeners on your podcast, if you're going to try to work with the state, it's a good idea to work with their approved labs on this, so you don't have to run into, well, we need to test that with our approved labs, because like the wastewater plant has to test their discharge for PFAS through one of these certified labs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they're
we
in
just work with
Michigan?
Giggly.
The ones you're using are in Michigan then? Or
Yeah,
they out of state?
They've been approved by the state of Michigan. They're not necessarily physically located in Michigan.
they're not?
There's a list of approved labs. We're in contact with the one that the Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Plant uses for just that reason, that the state requires them to use a certified lab.
Well, I'm assuming it's a little bit of problem with shipping because it's considered toxic, right? So you probably have to send it certain ways.
The wastewater plant has actually volunteered to send our samples in. We're just trying to work out a way to pay for the samples so they don't come out of the city of Marquette budget. And I have a donor lined up to do the first 10 samples. I just don't know where to tell her to send the check yet.
Okay. All right.
We have, Blaine, we have a question from Facebook that I just noticed.
Okay.
Sorry, Kathy. Kathy's been very patient. Would agricola research be relevant?
Agricola, what's that?
Okay, we'll move on because I do not know. I was on Lane County, Oregon Biosolids, aka Sludge Committee. I think biosolids are being sold, used in many areas, bagged up. Milo, granite, decades ago, still available. Okay, so have you read Hempbound Pap? Oh, paper by Doug Fine. Yeah, Hempbound by Doug Fine. Yep. Doug's read a few books. Hempbound must be one of his newer ones. I don't remember that title.
I'll look for that.
I've been reading the history of prohibition against growing hemp or marijuana, and also against studying hemp and marijuana, which has just recently been lifted. And it's why some of this work is so critical to be done now, because we don't have a track record of 70 years of studying these plants.
Yeah, and
So
that's
now we're
just, frustrates me to no end. And she mentions, that it might be a good companion plant for potatoes to prevent potato blight. That's an interesting concept. Agricola, a decades-long government site for any ag topic. Latin word for farmer.
We'll check it out.
Okay. All right. So thank you,
Great
Kathy,
sharing of information. You said there's Kathy. That was from Kathy, Dave?
Kathy Gang. Yep. Thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you.
So, but we are running short on time, I'm afraid. We need to jump to a quick round robin of the news. Do we have Mike Brennan? What kind of news do you have? Let's talk about the dark side for just a minute.
Not a problem.
They don't have a problem with burning the flower of this plant.
No problem with burning the flower. We have 40 dispensaries in Ann Arbor, so you can burn a lot of flower here. But we haven't done the show for a couple of weeks, so let me catch you up some news that came out. For instance, the June adult legal cannabis sales came out, and they were $260 million was sold in the 30 days of June. That actually set a record. The previous record was from March, which was around 250 million. So it's still trending up, although prices have crashed. The demand, shall we say, has increased a lot. So we're still seeing a steady rise in sales. There's a possibility, depending on what happens in the next 5.5 months, we could do around $3 billion in sales this year. And of course, 16% of that is taxes that go to the state, to the municipalities, to the counties, variety of places. So for every $1 billion in sales, that's $160 million in taxes. So we still have a lot of municipalities that haven't opted in, less than 200 out of the 1,800 municipalities. But that money is beginning to change a lot of these municipalities' minds. Maybe not such a bad idea, because the disbursement earlier this spring was $52,000 per dispensary. Ann Arbor alone got $2 million for their budget, extra money coming in. So, it's an interesting situation as it unfolds. Speaking of which, Michigan has now ended cannabis testing for some state job applicants because the problem they're having is it's hard enough recruiting, but if you also have the prohibition on having any kind of cannabis in your system, it makes it almost impossible to fill these jobs. So a lot of the government jobs now have cut that out, and I suppose as long as you're not doing it on the job, they don't much care, because they need the warm bodies in the seats to get all this stuff done. And right now, of course, as we all know, there's lots of jobs out there, not so many applicants out there for those jobs, so they need to do what they need to do. And then finally, an interesting story came across the transom that we published in today's newsletter, the 420 Post newsletter. The national cannabis legalization has seen 61% drop in federal cannabis prisoners. Now, this was just from the period 2013 to 2018. I'm sure those numbers are considerably higher now, but there was a lot of people in jail back when it was illegal. No, it was not, no one got hurt. It was just they just got busted because they were growing or smoking it or transporting it. So there's a lot fewer of those folks in federal prison right now. And I think we're up to 26 states that are adult legal. And there's, half a dozen or so that are going to be voting on it this November. So it's only a matter of time before I think it gets legalized or descheduled, as it were, on a federal level. But we're waiting for that to happen. And because right now, as I don't have to tell you guys, it can be challenging to get a bank account, for instance. And if you do get a bank account, because of all the regulations that the feds throw at you and all the things that you can spend $1,000 a month just on your checking account because they have to hire people for all the compliance. And so it's still an expensive proposition to move the money. And so it remains a cash business, which also means a lot of these dispensaries are getting ripped off because the bad guys know there's a whole lot of cash in the inside of those dispensaries. So there's a lot of problems that hopefully will be solving themselves here in the next foreseeable future here. We continue to keep our fingers crossed. Now to you, Mr. Blaine.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, you're right. It has been a few weeks. There's been a lot of things that have been happening. I want to mention a couple of projects that people can find out a little more, and we'll be having more talks about it on the show. But Hemp for Humanity, if you go to that website, it's H4H is what it is. They have a project called Canary Homes, who we're working with Jessica D. Decker. Not related to James D. Decker up north, but anyways. So that project is coming along really, really nicely. They've started the campaign for the fundraising part of it. We've got some plans pretty well set to go. And I still am very hopeful that we're going to be breaking ground yet this year on that project. So excited for us to be along with that. And we're very grateful for everybody that's joining into that project to help her. This is a case where a young lady has an immune deficiency that most places that she would live in would be toxic to her system and cause her to have quite a bit of health issues. So we're really excited about that. We're planning to do maybe a couple tours this fall of some hemp projects. One is going to be down in Fenville. They've recently completed or still working on a project down there where they actually used tires in the construction, and then they used hemp on the inside and on the plastering side. So very excited to do that. We'll probably have since it's right next to the winery, we'll probably have maybe a little winery stop there on that one. So that might be fun for that. So we're looking forward for that for sure. And then, again, a lot of people are working behind the scenes, incredibly crazy for helping hemp and supporting hemp. Let me see if I can bring up, there's a very recent, there we go. See if I can find it.
Are you looking for
This is a hemp roundtable. Jonathan Miller will be speaking on the 27th of July, congressional hearings, and going to be talking about the issues that have gone on with FDA not providing a regulatory pathway for the CBD to be able to be marketed and sold. And so it's just causing a lot of problems for the hemp industry, for the CBD industry, for hemp farmers. So we're very excited that he's going to be able to be speaking at that and continuing that forward. So, and if you have not already signed on, please go there and sign on to their hemp supporter. So that way you can send information out to your representatives as it comes up and let them know that you'd like them to support this legislation as we move forward. It's important. And it's sad that we still do not have a regulatory pathway and that FDA kicked it back to Congress. And so we're just hopeful and we're very grateful for the work that they do there for sure on that. For sure.
Yeah, and thanks to U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, Senator Rand Paul, and Jeff Markley, who reintroduced the Hemp Access and Consumer Safety Act bill, which is what Jonathan's working on.
So that's awesome there. So, Dave, I don't know if you have it up or not, but
what's that?
The Jimmy Buffett pasta salad.
I didn't know anything about
that's
it.
fine. I know. I just sent it to you a while ago. But if you can let me share.
This is not the emperor without the hat now, Blake.
I'm going for it. I'm just going for it.
Is it on the website?
No, it probably hasn't been on our website yet. It's a new one that I found this last week.
You emailed it.
That's if you let me share, I can bring it up.
You can. Are you able?
Oh. You're the wizard.
Well, I got it. I got it here.
If not, I can figure it out. Man.
All right. Whoops.
Yeah.
Stop.
So yeah, this is so for all you parrot heads out there, okay?
Whoops, I can't.
Good golly, Miss Molly, which way do I steer? This is by Lazy Cooking. I love the title, that's for sure. This is about a 25-minute recipe. It makes about 5 servings, so you might want to increase it. It's a great salad, especially for the summertime. So the idea here is that we have a cheeseburger in paradise, is what we have here. So cheeseburger. So all the ingredients, but not really in a cheeseburger form. So it says if you're trying to amend your carnivorous habit and neither bun nor the beach is within reach, Jimmy Buffett pasta salad is the next best thing to a cheeseburger in paradise. A bed of buttery, fluffy pasta in a vessel for this fun twist on a classic American creation. It's topped with everything Jimmy sings about. A big hunk of flavor, ground beef, crispy onion, crunchy lettuce, juicy tomatoes, and savory cheddar cheese. These tasty ingredients swim in sweet and creamy mayo, ketchup dressing that you might even want to dip your French fried potatoes in. You'll be asking, which way do I steer? They anchor your fork into some Jimmy Buffett salad.
You need to got the ingredients here with that too, by the way. So, but go ahead. So
okay, so we got the ingredients here. It's whole wheat pasta, a tablespoon of we're not putting olive oil in there. We're putting hemp seed oil in there. That's for sure. Onion, garlic, clove taste, pickles, lettuce, cheddar cheese, teaspoons dressing, mayo, mayonnaise, half a tablespoon of ketchup, and I haven't had a chance to put it on here yet, but I would definitely suggest that you put in at least a quarter cup of hemp hearts as well.
A little
gives it that nice
crunch.
little crunchy flavor to it, that almondy flavor to it. So there's the directions for it. It's pretty simple to make. It'd be a hit. And for all you parrot heads out there, this might be one you might want to add to your recipes there. And then I like to give credit where credit's due. So again, this is from Lazy Cooking. They have a picture of a koala bear on top of it sleeping. So,
All right.
So that's what I got, Dave.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Be safe up there.
Thank you.
Keep up the
Thank
good
you
work.
very much
Pleasure
for all the
chatting
hard
with you.
work you're doing. We appreciate it.
And,
Well, if you come to the area, if you're anywhere near Marquette, let us know and you can tour our farm. And then there's other buildings that have experiments going on in them as well.
I'll bring you a hemp frisbee if I get by that way.
All right, that would be lovely. Thank you very much.
All right. Peace
All
and
right.
love. Thanks.
All right,
Everybody.
thanks, everyone.
Bye.